authors early on is you find authors and you nurture them and you help them grow, and Moshe wants to do this. That's why he became an editor. This is who these people are. So you have to believe that they're only willing to do that 1 out of 10 times, and the other 9 times they are choosing something they know is inferior, to believe that 90% is crap. This is I think a pernicious myth. In science fiction and fantasy, there's a large contingent of sort of self-hating science fiction and fantasy writers that has wiggled their way into among us, into our own hearts. Partially because a lot of us go through academia, and a lot of us go through academia, and we are taught that what we love to read is not as valuable or as important as what we should be reading. And so because of that, we kind of divide our minds and say, this is what I love, but I will admit that this is crap because I've been taught that this is crap. And so we, at the same time, and that we are almost ashamed of what we do or what we read, we buy into this whole feeling that there are certain things, that certain people's opinions are more important than our own opinions. And so our own opinion doesn't matter as much as our literature professor's opinion. I want to do some research on this. I've got an academic background. I wasn't sure how I could really do some research on this without spending, large amounts of time. And I'm not willing to do that because I like to write books. But I came up with my own research statistic to see if Sturgeon's Law is really true. My metric, my methodology was I was going to go to the website Rotten Tomatoes. Anyone familiar with Rotten Tomatoes? Who's not familiar with Rotten Tomatoes? Okay, that's okay. Rotten Tomatoes, what it does is it collects all the movie reviews, and it makes all the reviewers, all the big ones and all the middle ones, either say yes or no, if they like the film or not. And then they give a percentage, they assign a percentage to the film that is the number of critics who like the film. So, for instance, if you find a film on Rotten Tomatoes that has 92%, that's a really good rating because 92% of the critics, when forced to either say yes or no, had to give it, they gave it a yes. If something, on the other hand, gets a 2%, that means that, I actually really like this website because I've learned that I can't really trust any one critic very much because they always seem like they will be, that I'll like what they're saying half the time and not like it the other half. But if the overwhelming majority of the critics seem to like or dislike a film, I found that my opinion falls in line with that very often. I may not love it as much as they do, but I've never seen a 90% film that I've hated, and I've never seen an under 10% film that has actually been any good. And so this is a decent metric, okay? And so I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a famous film reviewer that I think is somewhat critical, and I'm going to count the movies for the last year that they liked and the movies they didn't like. And so if the most critical among us is admitting that is thumbs downing 9 out of 10 films, then maybe we might have something here, okay? And so I picked Roger Ebert, probably the most famous movie critic around. I've read his essays. He's very eloquent. I don't always agree with him, but he always is very thoughtful. And I said, okay, let's see. And I actually did this, this is now a year ago that I did it, to do my research. So it was January of last year up through, I did the previous year's movies. And I found that Roger Ebert thumbs up about 2/3 of the films he reviewed for Rotten Tomatoes. So Roger Ebert, a pretty critical guy. He liked 2 out of 3 movies that he saw. And he doesn't just go to the movies that he thinks he will like. He's paid to go to a broad range and give criticism on them. So I thought, well, Sturgeon's Law doesn't hold for Roger Ebert. I decided I need to do a little more research here. Maybe Roger Ebert, maybe he just has this impression of being a hard-nosed critic, but really maybe what he is a popular critic. Maybe he's a lot more accommodating than it seems because he's so popular and whatnot. And so I said I'm going to try and find the most critical person on Rotten Tomatoes I can. And the way I did this is I searched through great movies until I found great movies that had all thumbs up except for 1 thumbs down. I eventually made my way to The Return of the King. The Academy Award winner, Lord of the Rings movie, fantastic film. Everybody loved it except for one dude. when I was looking. His name is Stephen Whitty. And so I thought, okay, this has to be the most critical guy out there, right? He hated Lord of the Rings, he hated the movie that won 13 Oscars. He's got to be super hypercritical. So I went and looked at his last year's worth of movies, and he liked 1 out of 2. He liked 50%. And indeed, I found that he had given a thumbs up rating to the movie Bride Wars.
Oh.
Which had it under 10%.
Oh.
So he thumbs down Return to King, and he thumbs up Bride Wars.
Oh.
Almost everything else he had thumbed up were things that everyone else had acclaimed. He just, for some reason, liked this random movie that no one else liked. And so I thought, okay, if this person isn't thumbs downing 9 out of 10 films, what is this saying? What is it really saying? That the harsh critics only dislike about half. Does Sturgeon's Law hold? I think it doesn't. I really don't think it holds at all. I think what we've got going on here is I would like to encourage a shift in the way that we as a community look at our science fiction and fantasy and the way we talk about it. Now, the point of this is not to say that you can't have an opinion. I don't mean that at all. I think you should have opinions. We are going to have disagreements, and our disagreements are part of what makes us grand as a community. We don't agree on everything, and that's great. It forces us to converse, to talk, to come up with different means of approaching fiction. It is perfectly all right if you don't like a given book, even if everyone else likes it. It's perfectly all right for you to not like my books. That is just fine, because I write in a certain style that is not going to appeal to everybody. But what my suggestion to us is, as a community, is that we need to stop we need to stop equating don't like it with this is crap. All right? That is an important distinction. That's not to say that the crap doesn't exist, because it does. However, I think that most of the time, when we call something crap, what we really mean is, this is not a type of book that I appreciate and enjoy. This is not my style. And so instead we say it's crap. It's very popular right now to do that to certain very popular books. To just equate popularity with crap. I did this with Harry Potter for years. I heard about how popular Harry Potter was. I'm like, obviously this has to be terrible. I write true science fiction and fantasy. I went to World Fantasy the year that she was really getting popular, and I swear 3 or 4 people on panels didn't call her by name, they just called her that damn Scottish woman. Because she was selling so many copies, and she just came out of nowhere. They were saying it kind of half fondly, but not really. I put off reading Harry Potter because of these reasons, this sort of highbrow intellectualism that I felt I had. I then read Harry Potter, and I loved Harry Potter. I thought Harry Potter books were fantastic. I thought that the writing was really good. I learned from them, and I thought she was just doing a really great job of a number of things, specifically her treatment of children, which is something that, she is just really good at making kids sound and think like kids in fiction form, which is something that I'm not terribly good at. And so reading hers, I was humbled by this because she was so good at it. And it's very common for us to do this to big popular books, particularly if they come from outside our genre. I had dinner with Christopher Paolini about a year ago, and Christopher Paolini has had heaped upon him all kinds of scorn by the science fiction and fantasy community, because his book Vericon is somewhat standard in the fantasy genre, right? For a lot of us who had read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, we picked it up and said, oh, I've read this before, therefore this equals crap, is what the steps we made. Whereas a lot of teens were picking it up who hadn't read the previous books and were loving it. And I knew lots of people who looked at Vericon and said, why don't you just read Dragon Riders of Pern? Because that's just essentially what this is. But to the kids picking this up for the first time, Vericon was their Dragon Riders of Pern. Just like when I was 14 and I picked up Dragonflight, and it was one of these most majestic books I'd ever read, the kids are picking up Vericon. And what does it say about us that we disdain something simply because we have seen it before? So therefore, everyone else should agree, even those who haven't seen it before, that that scorn should be heaped upon it. I want to get away from this. I want to get away from science fiction and fantasy authors becoming popular and immediately distancing themselves from the community in order to seek the accolades of the established literary community. You see this happening quite frequently in the community. I will not mention some authors. I'll mention some who don't do it. Neil Stephenson, I read an interview with, that really impressed me with. Someone said, tried to nudge him towards that in the interview question. He said, no, I write science fiction. This is what I do. I am proud of this. He got a kind of stand up and cheer moment from me reading that, because so many people in that situation would say, well, yes, I know a lot of science fiction fantasy is crap, but if you look at the cream of the crop, we're actually, they always put themselves in this, this top part. Whatever, the 90% is always what everyone else is doing, or what everyone else is reading.